I will never forget the night the drums stopped beating. The air was thick with smoke from the sacred fire, and the moon hung low like a pale witness. In the center of the village square, a pit had been dug. Its mouth was wide, hungry, and waiting. I stood frozen, my feet sinking into the cold earth, as I watched them lower the boy inside. He was only 8, maybe 9. His hands were tied with palm fronds, his tiny chest rising and falling fast. He did not cry, maybe he was too scared for tears. Around us, the elders chanted words I didn't understand, their faces lit by flickering flames. The people called it the purification of the motherless. I called it murder. Someone handed the oldest man in the circle a calabash filled with wet red soil. He sprinkled it over the boy's head as if blessing him, then began shoveling more into the pit. The child's eyes darted wildly, his muffled voice breaking through the chants. The earth swallowed his legs first, then his waist. I could hear his breath quicken, a sound so sharp it cut through my chest. The women ululated as if celebrating a wedding. My own hands trembled because I knew him. I knew his name. And if I told you what I did next, you would never forgive me. But before I tell you that, you must understand how I even found myself standing there that night, watching the life of a child sink beneath the ground while the whole village smiled. It all began 3 months earlier, when I first arrived in Sango, a small, isolated village in the northern plains. My father had sent me there to live with my uncle after the sudden death of my mother. He said I needed discipline and tradition. What I didn't know was that Sango's traditions were soaked in blood. The first days felt strange but harmless. The people were warm, always smiling, and the air carried the smell of roasted yam and groundnut soup. My uncle, Baba Sunday, was a respected elder. He had a deep voice that made every word sound like a warning. He never talked much about the rules, but he always said, "Here, we honor the ancestors above all." It was on my 5th day that I met the boy from the pit. His name was Daniel. He was an orphan who lived with the old herbalist near the river. Daniel was thin but quick, his eyes always darting like he was expecting trouble. He liked to skip stones across the water, and sometimes he brought me wild mangoes from the bush. We became friends almost instantly. One afternoon, as we sat by the river, Daniel asked me a question that made my stomach twist. "Do you believe in the purification?" he said. I shook my head. "What's that?" He glanced around as if someone might be listening. "They say it's when the ancestors take back the souls of the motherless before bad spirits claim them." I laughed nervously. That sounds like a story to scare children. But Daniel didn't laugh. His eyes darkened. "It's not a story. It's real. It happened last year." He didn't say more, and I didn't push him. But the way he looked at me that day stayed in my mind. As weeks passed, I noticed strange things. Some children in the village avoided Daniel. The women would stop talking when he passed by. Once, I saw 2 men spit on the ground after he walked past them. When I asked my uncle about it, he simply said, "Orphans carry shadows. Too much shadow can kill a whole village." At first, I thought it was just superstition. Then, one cold morning, I heard the drums. The sound was deep and slow, carrying a kind of dread that settled in my bones. My uncle's face was unreadable as he told me to come to the village square. Everyone was gathered there, forming a circle around the pit. And there, in the middle, tired and trembling, was Daniel. I tried to step forward, but my uncle's hand clamped down on my shoulder like a vice. "Do not move," he said. "Why is he there?" I asked, my voice shaking. His grip tightened. "The ancestors have called for him." I thought it was a bad joke. But the chanting began, and the elders started the ritual. Daniel's eyes found mine, and in them, I saw a mix of fear and something worse, acceptance. He knew what was coming. I wanted to scream, but the voices of the villagers drowned everything. I wanted to run, but my uncle's hand was still on my shoulder. And then the soil began to cover him. By the time it reached his chest, my breath was gone. By the time it reached his neck, my knees had buckled. But when it touched his face, I snapped. I did something in that moment that changed everything, and it is the reason my life has never been the same. What I did will either make you see me as a hero or a monster. The moment the soil covered Daniel's mouth, I tore myself free from my uncle's grip. I didn't think, I just ran into the circle, shoving past the woman and kicking over the calabash. The chanting faltered, replaced by gasps and angry shouts. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst as I grabbed the shovel from one of the elders and began digging him out. Daniel's eyes were wild with shock, and his small body shivered beneath the dirt. I clawed at the earth with my bare hands, the taste of dust choking me. But before I could pull him free, two strong arms yanked me backward so hard my feet left the ground. It was my uncle. His voice boomed like thunder. "Are you mad? Do you want to curse this village?" I screamed back, "He's just a boy. You can't bury him alive." The elders closed in, their faces grim. One of them, the oldest man in Sango, stepped forward. His eyes were clouded with age, but his voice was steady. "The ritual is older than all of us. The boy's life is not his to keep." The crowd roared in agreement. Some spat at my feet, others called me a child of the city as if it were an insult. My uncle dragged me out of the circle, his fingers digging into my arm. "You don't understand the danger," he hissed. "Interfere, and the curse will follow you." But all I could see was Daniel's face disappearing again as the dirt swallowed him. They completed the ritual while I was forced to watch from the edge, my body shaking with helpless rage. The last sound I heard from Daniel was not a cry, it was silence. When it was over, the crowd dispersed as if they had just finished planting yam, not a child. My uncle didn't speak to me the entire walk home. The night was heavy with the smell of earth, and I felt it clinging to my skin like guilt. I didn't sleep. The image of Daniel's small hands twitching under the soil burned in my mind. At dawn, I slipped out of the hut and made my way back to the square. The pit was covered, smooth, as if nothing had happened. But a few steps away, half hidden in the grass, was the small leather charm Daniel always wore around his neck. I picked it up and held it tightly, as though it could still carry a piece of him. That day, I decided I would never forgive them. Life in Sango carried on as if nothing had happened. The women pounded yam, the men fished in the river, children played in the dust. No one mentioned Daniel's name. When I asked the young girl about him, she just shook her head and whispered, "The ancestors forget those who are taken." Weeks passed, but something inside me refused to move on. I began asking quiet questions. When did this purification start? How many children had been buried? But each time, people either ignored me or gave me riddles for answers. Only one person spoke plainly, Mama Neka, an old widow who sold palm oil near the river. One evening, as I helped her carry water, she leaned in close. "Be careful, child. The ones who speak against the purification, they don't last long here." "Why?" I whispered. Her eyes darted to the shadows. "Because it is not the ancestors who ask for it. It is the living." Her words sat heavy in my chest. If what she said was true, then this was no holy ritual, it was murder dressed in tradition. But before I could ask more, a loud voice echoed from the path. My uncle was standing there, his face like stone. "Come home," he ordered. That night, he confronted me. "You are asking too many questions," he said. "If you value your life, you will stop." I clenched my fists. "If you think I'll forget what you all did to Daniel, you're wrong. He stared at me for a long time before finally speaking. If you want to survive here, you will learn to close your eyes when the ancestors call. I wanted to shout at him, to call him a coward, but something in his voice made me pause. Fear. He wasn't just warning me, he was scared. I was still trying to understand why when the next set of drums began to beat. And this time, the boy they were calling for wasn't just a boy from the village. It was someone I knew far too well. The moment I heard the drums, my stomach dropped like a stone in water. They were faster this time, urgent, pounding through the air like the heartbeat of something evil. I was sitting outside, peeling cassava, when the first beat echoed through the hills. My hands froze. My uncle stepped out of the hut, his jaw tight, his eyes refusing to meet mine. Who is it? I asked, though my voice came out as a whisper. He didn't answer. The villagers began streaming toward the square, their faces lit with the same dark excitement I had seen on the night they took Daniel. Some carried palm fronds, others small bowls of red soil. I followed, my bare feet kicking up dust, my chest tightening with every step. And then I saw him. Michael. The boy who had been my only other friend in Sango since Daniel's death. The boy who had shown me how to climb the palm trees for coconuts, who shared roasted plantains with me on the days my uncle forgot to feed me. He was only 10, with a smile that could turn a bad day good. Now he stood in the middle of the square, his wrists bound with palm fronds, fear swallowing his face. My mind couldn't process it. Why him? I asked the nearest man. The man spat on the ground. His parents died on the same day. The ancestors have been restless. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run into the circle and untie him the way I had tried with Daniel. But I remembered what happened last time, how my uncle had dragged me away, how the villagers had turned on me. Only this time, I could see something worse in their eyes. If I moved, they would bury me too. Michael's gaze met mine, and for a split second, I thought he was going to cry. But he didn't. He just shook his head, slowly, as if telling me not to do anything. That single motion felt like 1,000 knives in my chest. The oldest elder stepped forward, carrying the calabash. The chanting began. My legs were trembling so badly I thought I might collapse. I remembered Mama Neka's words, "It is not the ancestors who ask for it. It is the living." Then it hit me. If the living chose who was taken, then maybe Michael was not chosen by fate, he was chosen by someone. I scanned the crowd. Some faces were bored, some almost gleeful. But there was one man, short, with a scar down his cheek, watching Michael with a look that wasn't fear or sadness, but satisfaction. I had seen him before, whispering to the elders during meetings. Why would he want Michael gone? Before I could think further, the soil started falling into the pit. My pulse roared in my ears. The memory of Daniel's muffled breath slammed into me, and something inside me snapped again. But this time, I didn't rush forward. I turned and ran, away from the square, through the narrow path behind the yam fields, toward Mama Neka's hut. When I burst inside, she jumped, spilling a bowl of ground pepper. "They're going to kill Michael." I gasped. "Tell me what this ritual really is." Her face went pale. She closed the door and whispered, "It's not about spirits. It's about control. They kill the orphans because no one will fight for them. No parents to avenge them. Their land, their parents' property, everything gets taken by the elders." My mind reeled. So Daniel, Michael, they were killed for land. She nodded grimly. And for silence. Orphans are easy sacrifices. No one asks too many questions. I felt sick. My legs wanted to give out, but I couldn't stop picturing Michael's face disappearing beneath the soil. "Help me stop them," I begged. She gripped my arm tightly. If you go there now, you will join him. I shook my head. I'd rather die than let them bury another child. She looked at me for a long moment, then reached under her mat and pulled out something small, a thin iron dagger with a leather-wrapped handle. If you're going to do this, she said, you will need more than courage. I took it, my hand trembling. I had no plan, no idea how I would face the entire village. But one thing was certain, if I didn't move now, Michael would be gone forever. I ran back toward the square, my breath ragged, my heart threatening to burst. I could already hear the chanting fading into the final verses. And just as I reached the edge of the crowd, I saw the soil reach Michael's neck. That was the moment I screamed his name, and the entire village turned to look at me. The chanting stopped like a knife cutting through sound. Every face turned toward me, men, women, children, all staring with a mix of anger, confusion, and something else, hunger. My chest heaved as I forced my way into the circle, the dagger hidden in my right hand. Let him go. I shouted, my voice trembling but loud enough to echo against the huts. The elder with the calabash squinted at me. You again, he said, his tone dripping with disdain. The one who defies the ancestors. My uncle stepped forward, his face pale but his voice firm. Go home, child. I ignored him and dropped to my knees beside the pit. Michael's eyes were barely visible above the soil, but they widened when he saw me. The dirt around him was damp and heavy, his breathing was shallow. I turned back to the crowd. This is not tradition. This is murder. Gasps rippled through the villages. A few people murmured to one another, but the elders stood still, their expressions hard as stone. The man with the scar, the one I had seen looking satisfied earlier, stepped out of the crowd. His smile was thin and cold. You talk like someone who knows nothing of our ways, he said. This boy is cursed. His parents' land lies empty, waiting for someone worthy. And there it was. The truth, spoken without shame. You kill children for land, I said, my voice low but sharp. He didn't deny it. It is the law of survival. The crowd stirred uneasily. Some looked away, others nodded in grim agreement. I realized then that I wasn't just fighting one man, I was fighting a whole belief, one that fed their greed and fear. But I didn't care. In one swift motion, I plunged my hands into the soil and began digging Michael out. The elder lunged toward me, but I swung the dagger in front of me, forcing him to stumble back. Gasps and shouts erupted. My uncle grabbed my arm, but I pressed the blade against his wrist. His grip loosened instantly. Anyone who comes closer, I said, my voice shaking but fierce, will feel this blade. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was Michael's strained breathing beneath me. I kept digging, my nails breaking, dirt filling my mouth and eyes. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear. Then, without warning, a stone hit my shoulder. Pain exploded through me. I turned to see the scarred man holding another rock, his eyes blazing. She is possessed, he shouted to the crowd. The girl is cursed like the boy. We must bury them together. The villagers roared in agreement, surging forward. I barely had time to think before strong hands grabbed me from behind, wrenching the dagger from my grip. My feet left the ground as they dragged me toward the pit. Michael's muffled voice broke through the chaos. Run, he choked out. Run before they. His words cut off as more dirt was thrown over him. I fought, kicking and thrashing, but there were too many. The scarred man leaned close to my ear, his breath hot and foul. The ancestors will have 2 offerings tonight, he hissed. My blood ran cold. I realized then, they weren't bluffing. They meant to bury me alive alongside Michael. The pit was right in front of me now. The soil inside still shifted from where I had tried to free him. My legs scraped against the edge as they tried to push me in. I could see Michael's hand twitch weakly beneath the dirt, just inches from mine. And then, from somewhere deep in the crowd, a woman's voice screamed my name. It was Mama Neka. She was running toward us, holding something high above her head, something that shimmered in the torchlight. The villagers froze for just a second, murmuring in fear. That hesitation was the only chance I had. Mama Neka pushed through the crowd like a storm, her wrapper whipping around her legs, her eyes blazing with a fire I had never seen before. In her hand, she held a small wooden idol, dark and worn, its carved eyes glinting in the torchlight. The villagers stepped back instinctively, whispers rippling through them like wine through dry grass. "It's the forbidden idol," someone hissed. Another muttered, "She's calling the old spirits." Mama Neka's voice rose above them all. "If you throw this girl into that pit, you will curse every child born in Sango for 10 seasons. The elders shifted uneasily. Even the scarred men faltered for a moment before sneering. "Your threats mean nothing, old woman." She stepped closer, her gaze locked on his. "Then why is your hand trembling?" I saw it, the smallest shake in his grip on my arm. His eyes darted toward the idol before snapping back to her. Mama Neka turns to the crowd. "You hide behind the name of the ancestors, but you know this ritual is not theirs. The true spirits will not bless your greed." Her words landed like stones in still water. The chanting had stopped completely now, the villagers looked at each other, uncertainty growing. The scarred man's voice broke through the silence. "Enough. She is a liar. The spirits have chosen, and their will must be done." He shoved me forward toward the pit. That was when Mama Neka did something no one expected. She hurled the idol into the sacred fire at the center of the square. The flames roared higher, crackling violently as sparks shot into the air. The crowd gasped in horror. "You fools," she shouted over the roaring fire. "If you bury her, you will burn with her in the afterlife." The fear in their faces was real now. Even the elders stepped back. I felt the grip on my arms loosen slightly. I didn't waste a second, I wrenched free and dropped to my knees beside the pit, clawing at the soil around Michael with renewed desperation. "Hold on, Michael," I whispered, my voice breaking. Hands reached for me again, but Mama Neka moved like a shield, swinging a burning torch toward anyone who dared approach. "Touch her, and I swear by the river gods you'll never sleep again," she snarled. With one last heave, I pulled Michael free. He coughed violently, dirt spilling from his mouth. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling his tiny chest rise and fall. He was alive. The crowd stood frozen, torn between fear of the idol's destruction and the weight of their so-called tradition. Then the scarred man roared, his voice shaking with rage. "Seize them both. If we don't finish the ritual, the ancestors will destroy us." The villagers hesitated, but then, slowly, they began to move forward again. I knew in that moment we wouldn't survive if we stayed. I grabbed Michael's hand and pulled him toward the narrow path behind the yam fields. Mama Neka ran beside us, her torch lighting the way. Shouts rose behind us. The sound of pounding feet grew louder. They were chasing us. We tore through the fields, the dry stalks slashing at our skin. My lungs burned, my legs screamed for rest, but I didn't dare stop. Michael stumbled once, and I nearly dragged him off his feet. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the only light came from Mama Neka's torch. Ahead, I could see the dark line of the forest, the one place the villagers feared to enter at night. They said spirits lived there, spirits that were not bound by human rules. We didn't have a choice. As we reached the tree line, a voice rang out behind us, deep, commanding, and terrifying. It was my uncle. "Stop. If you cross into that forest, you will never come back." I turned, my chest heaving. The villagers were closing in, their faces twisted with fury and fear. My uncle stood in front of them, his eyes locked on mine. "Come back," he said, his voice almost pleading now. "Don't make me your enemy." For a heartbeat, I almost hesitated. Almost. But then I looked at Michael, dirty, trembling, but alive, and I stepped into the darkness of the forest. The moment we crossed, the night swallowed us whole. And somewhere in that black silence, something moved. The forest was alive with whispers. Leaves rustled overhead though there was no wind, and the air carried a damp, earthy smell that clung to my skin. Every step we took felt like sinking deeper into another world, one where the rules of the village no longer mattered. Michael's hand was cold in mine. Mama Neka led the way, her torch throwing long, dancing shadows against the trees. Somewhere behind us, I could still hear faint shouts, but they were growing distant. The villagers wouldn't follow us far, not here. "They fear this place," Mama Neka said, her voice low but steady. "They think it belongs to the restless dead." "Do they?" I asked. She didn't answer. We moved quickly, but the forest seemed endless. Roots twisted like snakes across the path, and strange calls echoed through the darkness. At one point, I thought I saw a pair of glowing eyes watching from the undergrowth, but when I blinked, they were gone. Michael stumbled, his legs buckling. I caught him before he hit the ground. His breathing was ragged, and he clutched at his chest. I can't," he whispered. "You can," I told him, my voice firmer than I felt. "Just a little farther." Mama Neka slowed, glancing over her shoulder. "We need to find shelter before dawn. The forest is safer than the village, but not safe." "Not safe from what?" I asked. Before she could answer, a sound ripped through the night, a high, piercing cry that didn't sound human. Michael clung to me, his eyes wide with terror. "It's close," Mama Neka said. She quickened her pace, and we followed, hearts pounding. We reached a small clearing where a huge, hollow tree stood like a blackened sentinel. Its trunk was wide enough to fit all three of us inside. Mama Neka pushed us in, doused the torch, and whispered, "Stay silent." We crouched in the darkness, my ears straining. The cry came again, closer now, followed by the sound of something heavy moving through the undergrowth. I felt Michael trembling beside me. Then, through a slit in the tree's bark, I saw it. A tall, thin figure gliding between the trees. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted unnaturally to one side. Even in the faint moonlight, I could see its face, or rather, the absence of one. Just smooth, pale skin where eyes and mouth should have been. It stopped in the clearing, turning its faceless head toward our hiding place. My breath caught in my throat. For what felt like forever, it stood there, listening. Then, slowly, it moved on, disappearing into the shadows. Only when the forest was silent again did Mama Neka speak. "That is why they fear this place. It is home to the ones even the ancestors cannot command." Michael looked up at her, his voice barely a whisper. What was it?" She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "Some call them the forgotten. Souls that were never buried, cursed to wander until the end of time." I shivered, my mind flashing back to Daniel, buried alive, his soul trapped beneath the soil. We stayed in the hollow tree until the first light of dawn. When we stepped out, the forest looked different, less like a nightmare, more like a tangled, ancient garden. But I knew better. "We can't go back to the village," I said. Mama Neka nodded. "They will hunt us. And if they find us, they will finish what they started." Michael clutched my hand tighter. "Then where do we go?" I opened my mouth to answer, but a rustle in the bushes made me freeze. 3 figures emerged, men from the village, their clothes torn, their faces pale. They looked terrified, but when they saw us, relief flooded their expressions. "You must come," one of them said quickly. "The village is cursed. Last night, the river turned red, and the crops have withered. The elders say it's because you broke the ritual. If you don't return, they will burn Sango to the ground." Mama Neka's eyes met mine. "If we go back, we may die. If we don't, they all may die." The forest seemed to close in around us, the air thick with unspoken choices. I knew then that whatever decision I made, it would decide the fate of everyone. The man's words hung in the air like a death sentence. My mind spun, Daniel's face, Michael's trembling hands, Mama Neka's warnings, and the faceless thing in the forest all flashing before me. If we went back, we risked being buried alive. If we stayed, the village might be destroyed, and more children would suffer. I looked at Michael. His eyes were pleading, not just for himself but for the people who had tried to kill him. He was still a child, still capable of forgiveness I couldn't understand. Mama Neka's voice was low. "They will not welcome you as a savior. They will see you as the cause of their suffering. Think carefully." I thought of my uncle. He had held me back, threatened me, yet there had been fear in his eyes, fear not just of the elders but of losing something deeper. Maybe he, too, was trapped in this web of lies they call tradition. Finally, I spoke. "We will go back, but not to surrender." The journey to Sango felt longer than the first time I came. The villagers were waiting at the square when we arrived, their faces tense and desperate. The river behind them really had turned a deep, unnatural red, and the fields looked like they'd been scorched overnight. The scarred man stepped forward, pointing at me. You have brought the curse. End it, or we will bury you."